Yes, Vine said, her voice steely. Because those creatures are the only reason any of us might still be alive in 9 days. Zilix stared at her, his tendrils twitching with residual dread. Every logical part of his mind screamed that inviting such beings onto their fragile moonbase was folly. But logic had lost ground the moment their systems started to fail. Now, only desperation remained. The bridge was quiet again, save for the soft hum of life support systems struggling under the increasing spore load. Commander Volkov didn't flinch when I mentioned our biosphere's corrosive nature, Vine added, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. He didn't hesitate, they're already planning deployment. Nix's spots glowed a steady rhythm, focus, readiness. I'll prepare the docking protocols and sterilization buffer, she said, rising from her station. And I'll oversee the environmental chamber calibration, Zilix muttered reluctantly. But I still think we should keep a stun field up. That, Vine said dryly, goes without saying. 2 rotations later, the Relentless descended like a shadow cast by the gods of war. Its hull gleamed with heat dispersion plating, the sheer mass of the vessel bending space gently around it as it moved into low orbit. Specialized landing modules detached like sleek wasps, each one piloted by a crew trained to navigate disaster zones on worlds far more lethal than this one. Within the command center of the Calarian colony, the air had been thickened to human. Tolerance emergency filtration units working overtime to keep both oxygen and spores in careful balance. The landing team arrived in formation, 6 humans in matte black suits that shimmered slightly with active shielding. Their helmets displayed HUD data in alien glyphs translated from Calarian systems. Commander Volkov led them. Vine greeted him formally again while Zilix hung back behind an environmental screen. Situation update? Volkov asked without preamble. Vine gestured to the colony's holographic table, projecting a shaky scan of the avalanche zone. The collapse has sealed this tunnel network, she explained, with approximately 218 colonists inside. Oxygen levels are dropping. Interference from mineral deposits is making remote communication almost impossible. Volkov studied the map for a moment, then pointed to a ridge just outside the avalanche's edge. That's where we'll begin deployment of the ground-penetrating radar array. We'll use micro-thumpers to scan the subsurface, triangulate pockets of trapped survivors, and begin breaching with shaped plasma cutters. He glanced at Daniels, his chief engineer. We'll also set up the methane conversion pods here and here. We'll need 40 square meters of stable surface for the environmental domes. Daniels nodded and strode off with 2 techs. Zilix's eyes narrowed at Volkov. Why do you already have countermeasures for a biological threat you didn't know existed before arrival? Volkov looked at him evenly. Because we've learned to never assume things can't get worse. Nix's spots flickered with amusement. That's very human. Volkov turned back to Vine. Captain, once we've established a stable breach zone, I'd like permission to deploy a mobile triage unit inside the tunnels. Some of your people may not survive relocation without intervention. Vine nodded gravely. Permission granted. Hours later, the Relentless team had begun operations at a pace that astonished even the most efficient Calarian crew. Precision cut, tunnels, deployed environmental domes, portable atmospheric filtration systems tuned on the fly for Calarian needs. By the second planetary day, the first batch of trapped colonists had been extracted, oxygen-starved but alive, and the humans, gods help them, had gone deeper. Commander Volkov moved through crumbling rock and poisonous spores like a myth-given flesh, his team illuminating the dark with glow strips and coded hand signals. The spore count was rising, and their biofilters were running at max capacity. Daniel, suit coated in fine silver powder, muttered grimly about structural instabilities and toxin saturation. Then, the first attack came. It wasn't just spores. Something moved inside the avalanche debris. Something that reacted violently to thermal signatures and vibrations. One of the Calarian engineers screamed as a segmented tendril lashed out from the tunnel wall, skewering a drone and sending sparks and acidic goo flying. Volkov's team responded instantly, deploying suppressive sonic emitters and blinding strobes designed for unknown biolife. The creature, some kind of hyper-adapted spore host, recoiled with an ear-splitting shriek. "Daniels, get that breach sealed," Volkov barked. "On it! Plasma charge primed, firing!" A searing white line carved through rock, and the tunnel behind them collapsed just enough to give the humans time to regroup. "Are you all insane?" The Calarian engineer gasped through his respirator. Volkov's voice was calm. "We've handled worse. Stay behind us." Back at the colony, Zilix watched the rescue feed with wide, horrified eyes. "They ran toward it," he whispered. "Yes," Vine said softly, watching Volkov slam a containment shield into place with his bare hands. "They're not here because they're fearless, Zilix. They're here because they go anyway." Zilix looked at her. "I thought they were monsters." Vine nodded. "They are, and thank the stars for that." The final extraction took place under a collapsing sky of spore clouds and seismic tremors. The last group of survivors had been pulled free, each one stabilized in a portable triage dome while the Relentless prepped for departure. Volkov met with Vine one last time at the colony's makeshift landing pad, the starlight reflecting off, the scratches and soot across his armor. "You saved over 200 lives," she said. Volkov inclined his head. "We don't choose who needs help, Captain. We just show up." She extended her upper limbs in a slow gesture of respect. "Then, let me say this clearly, Commander. I was wrong to fear your kind." He looked out across the landscape where his team was packing the last of their gear. "You weren't wrong," he said. "You were just right about the wrong things." As the Relentless rose into orbit, leaving behind a recovering colony and a shaken but alive crew, Zilix sat in silence in the observation deck, staring at the stars. And for the first time in his life, he didn't wonder what was out there. He wondered who might be watching, and whether, when death came calling again, someone would whisper, "Send the humans. Sealed behind us," Kowalski confirmed, voice tight. "No way back." Zilix turned, panic tightening his chest as he saw the collapsed section, twisted metal and pulsating threads of the organism weaving through it like veins in a dying body. "We can't go back," Reed said, rising slowly, shielding the children with her bulk. "That route's gone." Volkov didn't hesitate. "We go forward. Daniels, how far to the eastern dome?" She tapped rapidly into her scanner. "Another 110 meters. Structure's weakening by the second. We've got maybe 5 minutes before full collapse. Then we move in 4. Volkov snapped. "Reed, get those kids to the front. Kowalski, help Zilix with the injured. Okafor, any chance that compound can hold out that long?" She shook her head, swearing under her breath. "Maybe. Barely. I'm running on fumes." Zilix's legs trembled as he lifted an injured elder across his shoulder. "We're not going to make it," he muttered. "This is madness." Volkov appeared beside him, eyes burning through the visor. "It is madness, but madness is how we survive on a death world. Let's go." The final sprint was chaos incarnate. The tunnel groaned with each step, fissures opening in the walls as the moon's fragile crust gave way. Okafor sprayed what little remained of the compound, every burst a prayer. Daniel's stabilizers flickered, barely holding atmosphere. Behind them, the organism surged forward, sensing collapse, feeding on entropy. They reached the final junction. A heavy hatch stood sealed, partially overgrown with alien tissue. Zilix stepped forward, trembling but resolute. "I have the override." His tendrils flew over the console, bypassing burned-out circuits and ancient codes. The lock clunked. The hatch groaned open. Reed pushed the first colonists through while Volkov turned to face the encroaching dark. The creature was faster now, more aggressive, sensing its prey cornered. Zilix saw it coming, an avalanche of tendrils and pulsating flesh barreling down the corridor toward the last group. And then Volkov stepped forward. Alone. He unholstered the last of the high-energy flares from his belt and primed it. "Move," he shouted. "No!" Zilix started, but Reed yanked him through the hatch. Volkov stood in the mouth of the tunnel, flare in one hand, detonator in the other. The organism surged closer. He smiled grimly. "You want death? Then you've got the wrong Deathworlder." He threw the flare. The light filled the tunnel. And then, detonation. The hatch slammed shut just as the shockwave rocked the eastern dome. Alarms screamed. The backup systems engaged. The lights dimmed and held. Silence followed, broken only by the wheezing breaths of survivors. Zilix knelt, trembling, his tendrils digging into the floor. He stayed behind. Reed placed a massive hand on his shoulder. He gave us a chance. That's what humans do. The remaining team worked without pause. Daniels re-established atmospheric regulation. Okafor collapsed from exhaustion but smiled. Reed paced, checking every colonist. And then, the comm crackled. "This is Volkov," came the voice, ragged but alive. "Tunnel's gone. But I found a service conduit. I'll see you bastards at the next checkpoint." Cheers erupted. Calarians and humans alike cried out in disbelief and joy. Zilix stared at the comm unit in awe. Deathworlders. Not because they kill, but because they refuse to die. He finally understood. And he would never see the galaxy the same way again. While Zilix mimicked them as best he could, relying on his multi-jointed legs and low center of mass to keep steady. The entrance to the cavern loomed like a wound in the ground. Dark, irregular, and humming with residual heat from the geological instability. "Life signs?" Reed asked again, already switching to infrared. "Still there," Okafor confirmed. "Faint. But inside, the cavern, depth estimate 20 meters down." Reed activated her helmet light. "We go in fast. No dawdling, no hesitation. If it moves and it's not Vulov, shoot it." Zilix swallowed dryly, his tendrils tightening unconsciously. He remembered the way Vulov had torn the organism's tendril with his bare hands. That image had burned itself into his mind. They descended, into the cavern in a controlled slide, the incline rough but manageable. The deeper they went, the cooler it became, and the more the alien growth became apparent. The walls were coated with thin veils of bioluminescent tissue, greenish, pulsating, a clear sign the organism had begun colonizing the tunnel. "It's everywhere," Daniels murmured, her weapon sweeping the darkness. Then, "There," Zilix pointed, nearly stumbling. Vulov lay partially embedded in a tangle of tendrils, unconscious but alive. His body was scorched, his suit in tatters, and his exposed skin showed signs of advanced atmospheric damage. Yet the beacon on his chest blinked, steadily. Reed moved first, slicing through the organic strands with a heated blade. "Okafor, get a line on him. Daniels, cover us." As they worked, Zilix moved closer, crouching beside the fallen commander. "You came back for me. Now I come for you," he whispered, his voice shaking with conviction. He reached out, hesitating, only a moment before placing a tendril gently on the human's shoulder. "Stay with us, Vulov. Don't you dare fade now." Suddenly the walls trembled with a low guttural roar. Not a sound exactly, but a vibration, a presence. "Movement," Daniel snapped. "It's coming." "Extraction now," Reed barked. Okafor activated the lifter harness and hoisted Vulov between them. Zilix kept close, using his body to shield the commander as they climbed back up the slope. Behind them, the tendrils quivered and snapped, drawn to heat, movement, life. They emerged into the choking light of the storm-blasted surface just as the cavern behind them began to collapse. "Run," Reed shouted. The rescue team sprinted for the module, Zilix moving with a speed he didn't know he had. The moment they crossed the threshold, Daniel sealed the hatch and slammed the launch command. The module lifted off in a bone-jarring ascent, fire licking at the edges of the viewport as the moon below gave its final groan. A massive fissure split the landscape, swallowing the entire colony site. The organism and whatever had created it vanished beneath tons of rock. Inside the module, no one spoke for a long moment, the hum of life support systems and labored breathing the only sound. Then Vulov stirred, groaning softly. His eyes fluttered, open. "Zilix?" he rasped. "I'm here," the navigator said quickly. "We're all here." Vulov tried to speak again, but Reed gently pushed him back down. "Rest, Commander. You're safe." "No, you..." Vulov's voice faded, his eyes sliding closed again. Back aboard the relentless emergency medical teams rushed the unconscious commander to the infirmary. Zilix followed as far as he could before being gently stopped at the door. "He'll need time," the medic told him. "But he's alive." Zilix sat in the corridor outside, breathing deeply. His limbs ached, and his mind was fogged with exhaustion, but he felt something new blossoming inside him. Understanding. This was who they were, the humans. Illogical, reckless, incomprehensibly brave, and perhaps exactly the kind of ally the galaxy needed.